Welcome to today's video, where we'll dive deep into the life-changing wisdom shared by one of the most iconic visionaries of our time, Steve Jobs. In just 15 minutes, Steve Jobs distilled 50 years of his life into 3 powerful stories during his famous Stanford University speech. Each story contains a lesson that has the potential to change the way you think about your life, your decisions, and your future. So, sit back and listen closely, because these lessons could be the turning point you've been waiting for. This is about Steve Jobs, the brilliant leader and founder of Company L. Have you ever wondered if it's possible to learn in 15 minutes what Steve Jobs learned in 50 years of his life? The answer is yes, it's possible. Steve Jobs delivered a speech at Stanford University where he shared the most important lessons of his life in just 15 minutes through 3 stories. Today, I will narrate that speech to you using Steve Jobs' words, but my voice, so that no one misses out on one of the greatest speeches of all time. Focus your full attention on this video because you are about to listen to something that could bring a big change in your life. Thank you so much. It's a great honor for me to be here today at one of the best universities in the world. I want to tell you the truth. I never graduated from college. In fact, this is the closest I've ever gotten to a college graduation ceremony. Today, I want to share with you 3 stories from my life. That's it, just 3 stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. After I enrolled at Reed College, I dropped out after 6 months, but continued to attend classes for another 18 months in some way or another. So, the question arises, why did I drop out? Well, it started even before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed college student, and she decided to give me up for adoption. She had a plan. I was to be adopted by a lawyer and his wife. Everything was set. But when I was born, they suddenly changed their minds. They said they wanted a girl. So my soon-to-be parents got a phone call in the middle of the night asking if they wanted to adopt a baby boy. They said yes. However, my biological mother later found out that my adoptive parents had not graduated from college, and my father hadn't even finished high school. She refused to sign the adoption papers at first, but eventually my parents promised her they would send me to college. That's how I ended up being adopted. 17 years later, I went to college, but I mistakenly chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford, and all of my working-class parents' savings were being spent on my tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. Yet, I was spending all the money my parents had saved throughout their lives. So I decided to drop out, trusting that everything would work out. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked interesting. It wasn't all that romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food, and I would walk 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. Much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you an example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, and about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me, and we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on this calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very clear looking backwards 10 years later. So, you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it has made all the difference in my life. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We had just released our finest creation, the Macintosh, a year earlier, and I had just turned 30. And then I got fired. How can you get fired from a company you started? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone who I thought was very talented to run the company with me, and for the first year or so, things went well. But then our visions of the future began to diverge, and eventually, we had a falling out. When we did, our board of directors sided with him. So at 30, I was out, and very publicly out. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and it was devastating. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I felt that I had let the previous generation of entrepreneurs down, that I had dropped the baton as it was being passed to me. I met with David Packard and Bob Noyce and tried to apologize for screwing up so badly. I was a very public failure, and I even thought about running away from the valley. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I had been rejected, but I was still in love. So I decided to start over. That's the power of Steve Jobs' life lessons. They remind us that success isn't a straight line. It's about trusting the process, even when you can't see how the dots will connect. Sometimes being fired or facing rejection leads to the greatest breakthroughs. We hope this speech has inspired you to find your passion, trust your instincts, and never stop pushing forward, no matter the obstacles. If this resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content that inspires greatness.